This, to me, is something that I talk about daily with my clients from a marketing and sales standpoint. Just constantly trying to stay on top of and understand who your buyer is and what their motivations are. We're talking about expanding your business or growth. This is a very important and key ingredient to the recipe of success for small businesses, especially small businesses.
Well, yeah. And the thing that comes to my mind on buyer is, in my world, potentially everyone is a buyer, but you have to gauge how much time to put into each individual and gauge the quality.
That's right.
Of what they're going to be going forward to. And that is.
Yeah. So from on the outset, I would just kind of get to the punchline of how I think about understanding your buyer. And it happens in feedback loops. So if you can create conversations with your current customers, whether it's while you're doing the work on a service standpoint or when the transaction's happening from a product standpoint, those insights are invaluable. There's no better way to know if you're on the right track and to assess what you're talking about is this person an ideal customer? Is this someone that we really don't want more customers like? Having those feedback loops is critical. It's critical to business growth long term, but it's also critical to all the investments you're making in your business, because I know from a marketing standpoint, I think about this a lot. Like when you put out ads or you put out creative for content, it comes down to the words you're saying, the creative you're creating, whether it's audio, visual, whatever, written, and is that compelling to your audience? Is it going to impact them enough for them to make a decision to move another step towards buying your product? And the only way for you to know that is to have a feedback loop. And there's lots of ways to have lots of different embedded feedback loops, especially if you're more systems oriented and you think about a customer journey and all of these kind of things. You can embed these, insight gaining.
But shouldn't you have
modes.
Also KPIs associated with that? Because you can have what you think is your favorite buyer, but then when you look into, wait a second, that type of buyer takes X amount of time, and they're only buying the product with the smallest amount of income.
Right. Yeah, I think the discernment of what a good buyer is to your business is very important. And that I think that comes in a lot of different forms. It takes looking at your margins just from a financial standpoint, what kind of labor drawdown is happening with each customer. B2C, you have lots of individual people that make up a collective sort of ideal persona of a customer that you're going after, but everybody's unique. So it's a moving target. It's always a moving target, which is why you need feedback loops. B2B, it becomes a little bit easier because you are going after typically a particular role at a company that you can, have comparables, and how that person operates in their role, as to how they make decisions around the things that you're selling is going to be pretty predefined. Sitting on the B2B for a second, because I have some notes on that. If you're selling a service to B2B or even product, it comes down to who writes the check, right? That's your buyer.
Absolutely.
Who signs the agreement? That's your buyer. It's not necessarily the person you're going to talk to originally. That person you talk to may be a champion to the buyer, or maybe an influencer to the buyer, stakeholder after the sale is made. But whoever is the person signing the check is who you're ultimately trying to sell. And I think that's a really good structural component to have in there to understand your buyer. Because if you think that your buyer is the person who is in front of you for 90% of that sale, but doesn't write the check, then you're missing a lot of optimization for labor that it takes to get a sale. And then once the sale happens, which goes back to what you're saying, it's on both B2C and B2B, even though I think B2B is a lot cleaner to distinguish. It's the discernment of each client or customer. where do they fit in your business?
Yeah.
Where do they fit in your model? And are you adapting your business to them or them to you? And I think there has to be a balance, right? It can't just be serving all of their needs as they arise, because you'll go crazy. But it can't happen the other way either. So I think you have to think about it on the, the sales side and the service side.
And then, I mean, I've got a lot of this, former employee, that I had that loved sales, but then we always found that salesperson, the amount of time they spoke to somebody because it made him feel good, but ultimately wasn't going to buy. And it was like, we already picked up on the keys of reason when they're not going to buy, but yet because they're nice to you, you feel like you're you're continually doing a job, like when to cut your losses.
Right. And that can be a mixture of,
do we want to just get in start this?
Yeah, we're going.
Okay.
It could be a mixture of imperfection on sales process and also a bad understanding of who your client is or who your buyer is. And that mixture can be disastrous because you're wasting everyone's time.
Yes.
But yeah, so I mean,
but all right, let's start from the beginning. Who your buyer is, I think.
Right.
If you've got a new company and you're starting, you don't fully know who your buyer is. So you need to, as you are getting new buyers, somehow logically jot down or keep record of how much time it took you to get this particular type of buyer, and have an idea of cost and time. I think from the get-go.
Yeah.
I don't really watch Shark Tank much anymore because it's kind of, it's more annoying than anything. And I feel like they've already filtered so many to it. And a lot of people that are already on the show, they already have a good product. Now they're just trying to get it. It's not
exposure.
Yeah. So, but the premise of it is still great. But I always found it so irritating when people had such a high customer acquisition cost and they were going to lose money for so many years until they got to this level that they have 1 million customers and then they're going to monetize.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I would love to know the percentage of companies that go that way that actually are successful at the end. I bet you it is less than like 1%.
I think it's a low amount. And it works for some. I mean, you have to have a proven path that there's not going to be a diminishing return. This reminds me of a story that an old guy when I used to live in Birmingham, an investment kind of a mentor to me, very wealthy guy, had lots of businesses and had started a lot of businesses, bought a lot of businesses. And he told me a story about a guy came to him, a friend of his, and said, "Hey, I'd like for you to invest in, I want to basically start a battery company, like one of these franchises." And he said, "Okay, I'll do it. But first, what I want you to do is, I want you to go around all the people your buyers, because this guy was sort of in the industry as well. Talk to them and say, hey, I'm going to start this battery store and this is what we're going to sell. This is what we're going to do. If I did this, would you buy from me?" And have that conversation. And if you come back and by and large, those conversations are positive, then I'll invest. And he did, brought those conversations back. He invested and it was wildly successful, multiple locations. And it was such a great lesson for me early on, especially from a marketing standpoint, to say, go do your market research.
Well, it's even better. That guy actually got real feedback from the people we asked. So,
and what's great about it is you launch your business, you call that list and you say, hey, remember when we had this conversation 6 months ago? I started my business. Why don't you come by and see what we have? They're going to come by. They want to support you.
Yeah, they already gave you their word.
They were part of that story. So, market research on the front end, if you're starting small, well, I mean, even if you're getting a large investment, even more so. So the investor knows that their money's safe.
If you're not willing to do that from the beginning, then you shouldn't start the company.
Yeah, it's sort of a proof of concept, idea that if product or service is proving that there is a market for it. But I think as you get along, making sure that that product market fit is still there. And to your point earlier, I think constantly discerning that customer and where's the fit for an equal balance of value between you and what the customer is getting. I think that's very important. Another note I made was buyers, whether they're individuals buying consumers or businesses, are people with thoughts and feelings. So as much as you can, you have to understand how they think and how they operate, how they behave. There's a ton of money in these bigger companies like Amazon, and of course all the so it's products, e-commerce. But then you have Google. It's like digital. All these consumer-based large companies. That's what they spend their time on, is all the kind of consumer
Analytics,
behavior.
yes.
If they click this button, then they do this. Then there's hordes of people in back rooms just looking at this data and making small tweaks to your iPhone, that whenever you refresh update your iPhone, they have a new way they want you to operate. One, to benefit you, but also, another to benefit them. So always staying constantly in tune with what their needs are and the value they get from your product or service is super important. Additionally, I would say that person also has needs and pain. So staying on top of their current need,
for existing buyers, existing customers.
Once you have identified that and they're a client, like I operate in the B2B world mostly, and so that's something that you have a person in a role that has to perform in their role at their company. They have needs that move and shift, and they're not always the same. And occasionally they have pain that comes out. So being able to identify that, always looking for that.
Well, you're selling a service too, so that is going to constantly evolve.
That's right.
You're not just selling a simple product.
And it's emotional, but it's all tied into that person and how they see themselves at the company. Some people have high drive. Some people have
in your
low
position,
drive.
Are you always dealing with the one who signs a check?
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, that I learned that early on. It's just chasing my tail if I'm not. Otherwise, you're just getting coffee with a friend.
You're just giving free advice and free work to the marketing agent at that company that's just going to take your idea to the boss.
Yeah. And it happens at all levels. You have a mom and pop business that's real successful, and it can be husband and wife. And in that scenario, they both need to be present. Even if one of them is really more the decision maker than the other, they need to be present as that sale is happening, not necessarily through the whole thing or through servicing, but at the critical moments, they have to be on board.
Now, the companies you've spoken to, even ones that you haven't worked for, but you went through the pitch and you got insight in their
opportunities lost.
Yeah, you got into their inside of what they're doing in their companies and everything, and got a pretty good idea where they're doing anything. I don't know about you, but I feel that a lot of businesses unknowingly neglect their best customers.
Yes.
Because they're so wanting to just keep adding new customers and adding new customers, and they neglect, and it really is true that 20% or 80% of their margin, if they just spend some time getting rid of the customers that don't add value and focusing on the ones that have continually supported them and have the best margins.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, more often than not, I will go into a new business or our new client, and I will tell them, like, they'll say, well, we want to do more marketing. We want to do, for growth. And I will say, first stop and look at what your current base looks like and what is currently happening that you're missing. So current clients that you could expand your account, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this whole land and expand analogy, I love that, because businesses miss what's right in front of them. What about those customers that are your top, 1 to 5%
that will pick up the phone for you?
Yeah, and they'll refer you, right? When have you asked them for a referral? So you can grow immediately with the hot, kind of leads that you have that are current customers. You don't need to go out and spend money on marketing for new acquisition cost when you have it sitting right in front of you. And in fact, you can use it as a feedback loop, because if you call these people up and ask them, hey, how's it going? I want to get some, unfettered feedback from you. If you have a good relationship with them and there's trust there, they're going to give you feedback. and they're going to tell you some stuff that you may not want to hear. They're going to tell you some stuff that you may have known. And you can turn that into an opportunity for more business, whether it's referral or expanding that current account. And another one too is, since we're on that, is looking back at lost opportunities. So, people that have come through the pipeline and they ended with a no, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year ago, going back to all of those and saying, hey, we don't like that. We did not land your business. Let's talk again about where we stand now.
Yeah.
If there's 10 of those, maybe you win 2 of them.
And I know they appreciate it too. I mean, how often did anybody else they dealt with give them a call and ask them their advice? And
again, feedback loops. If you lose an opportunity to a competitor or it fizzles out or whatever happens, if you have embedded in your sales process to always ask that prospect that said no, why, and say, would you just jump on a 10-minute call and I want to ask you a few questions about why you decided to go. This is not a sales pitch or anything like that. A lot of them will give you good feedback, and then you can say, okay, that's great. Now we know, and moving forward, we can adapt.
I learned a lot during, the great recession, post 2009, during all the foreclosures and everything, on the characteristics of people and who I wanted in future customers. Right. And that's still, even now, that's 10, 12 years ago, that's still fresh in my mind. Yeah. And so even loan interviews now, I click on those characteristics because when things are in a great environment, everybody sounds good.
That's right.
But
it's happening again now.
Absolutely. It really is. And I remember in the ones, 2009, 2010, of course we're primary commercial lending. So, but how many people are like, oh, here, take the keys. Mm-hmm. And so, and then luckily my executive vice president, she was with me at that time too. So even now when we're talking even good loans that by all standards, they're checking the boxes, but we're like,
it has a smell.
They exemplify the exact characteristics of the people that after the fact, were lying to you on way the current environment was really going.
Yeah. So you've gotten smarter.
Oh yeah. And not falling prey to that, because it happens in the banking world as things are going good. Banks just want to grow their asset size, grow. Mm-hmm. And that's how they have built their model, that unless they're continually adding on additional loans, their revenue is going to slow and stop, which is kind of poor, because once you put that loan on, they're still paying you interest. You already had to work, do that. You should be able to, pull back and still have good revenue coming in, but they've kind of built that cycle. And so as it's going, and then before the collapse or before the recession, there's less people refinancing, buying, especially in a rising rate. So I'm seeing them go out of their policy limits. Yeah. Doing a little bit less, doing the loans they would normally. Yeah. And the banks before be like, well, if you don't approve this, somebody else is.
That's right.
And that's what happened. So that's still fresh in my head. Great. Not deviating. Yeah. Go and have at it.
Yeah, for sure. You're seeing that now too with tech companies laying off thousands of people, and they're cutting the chaff from their business. And
those tech companies that are still producing, I bet you haven't noticed a degradation in the quality of services very much.
No, they're getting rid of. It's just a reform of their business, which happens in cycles. And so if a company is doing that on the normal, like on the every day or the every month, and they're constantly looking at their customers and asking themselves, do these customers fit? They don't have to go through that major layoff or major reform of their business from a product service standpoint. They're always constantly got that feedback loop going. I was going to say also too, I think the smarter you get, the more value you actually add to customers who maybe don't even become customers. I had this happen recently where I'm meeting with a prospect and we go through the sales process, and I kind of figured out about halfway through, like you were saying, you have these signs,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like, you know, this is not good timing for them to do what they want to do in their business. And, you know, so now it's on me to figure out how do I educate them to that fact, because they don't know what they don't know. So what I need to do is educate them that this is not good timing for you to spend money on this kind of thing, even though it would benefit me for them to hire me.
It's going to be short-lived.
Right. I just know that it's going to blow up. It won't be valuable for either one of us in the long run. So it's a value for me that I've gotten smarter to that fact. So now it's on me, and the work is on me to educate them to that fact. It's difficult because when someone set their mind doing something, even if it means paying you money, they want to do it. But I think the smarter you get in your business, the more value you actually add, even if it means not accepting a customer, especially in what you do. You know, if you're talking about commercial loans, you know, as you mentioned, if someone comes to you and wants to expand and they want to do this, that, and the other, they may have all the best intentions, but well,
if it's not going to be a win-win on both sides, I don't want to do it. You know, just because okay, it's going to be a win for us.
Yeah.
It's not good. You're going to have resentment later. Well, why'd you let me do this?
Exactly.
So I don't want to follow that.
It's your responsibility to inform them of that fact, but it takes time and doing a lot of those bad deals to have those red flags, you know, present themselves. All right. We've covered a lot here. Who's your buyer? And I think we hit a lot of context to that. Anything else you want to say on that?
No. Well, I mean, yeah, as you're going, knowing your buyer, I mean, really, you need to focus on, you know, two things. The cost the buyer is to you, the margins you're making, and then the time invested. Look at those three things and hone in and really take care of your best buyers.
Yeah.
And try to find ones that exemplify the characteristics and, you know, really sit back and analyze that, because I think a lot of businesses would be surprised that the customers that they love dealing with sometimes aren't their best buyers.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that, wait a second, they're really taking use of X amount of time. You know, we're going above and beyond for this, and we're actually losing money on them.
That's right.
And, you know, we want to service them, but we're going to have to take it back and say, we'll continue the service, but we have to start charging. We're not going to do it right away, but we're going to do it in this future. And
it needs to change.
Yeah. I mean, we've had to have those conversations and do that. And you'd be surprised. A lot of customers would say, okay, I understand it. And the business owners, the legit business owners, when you're dealing with businesses, they get it.
That's right.
They understand time.
Yeah. They see that you're investing in that relationship. Ultimately, it's not just a transactional thing.
Because if you're not going to charge when they're costing you more than the output, then just one day you're not going to be around, and that's worse for them.
That's right.
So,
and I would say the next natural thing to do, because I would start there at current clients, discerning those insights, is taking those insights and then putting them on the front end of your marketing and sales. You know, what you're learning on the service side, apply to the marketing side. You know, speak to your marketing team or your sales team and tell them what you're learning. In fact, it would be great to align both of those.
Yeah.
Align your marketing and sales, align both of those with your service so that everyone's communicating, and the insights that are being had over here can be produced now in new creative, new content, new messaging to the new buyer.
Yeah.
So it's good.